Hello, Petal. How you doing? How's it going? Bye, because we've got a big chapter to do today. Jeepers creepers, nearly 30 pages. Hey! Might take me a minute. I might have to do it in 2 goes, to be perfectly honest with you, but hey, these things happen. But before we get into all of that, how are things? How have you been going? It's been a good week. I like it. I was amazed at the speed of postal services from one end of the world to the other this week. That was pretty awesome. I was pretty impressed with that. It's quite crazy. You go from north to south, and it goes zoom, zoom, zoom. You go sort of like north to west, and it's like nom, nom, nom. Or something. I don't know what that noise was, but you know what I mean. It's kind of like chugga 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 sort of thing. Maybe it's because like the land masses are bigger. I don't know. These things go through my mind, and I'm like, what's going on? But apart from my brain going all over the place, how have you been? What's been going on? What's been happening? How's the weather doing? Are you planning for the holidays? Did you have any thoughts as well? I was thinking maybe from like about the 23rd. I might do some sessions each day, just kind of like reading out loud, reading live, that sort of thing. Just until New Year's or something. I don't know. I think we should just wing it. Best laid plans of mice and men and all that sort of stuff, You know how it goes, and it's difficult getting the right time and la-di-da. Not complaining, I just want to give everybody the happies. That sounds wrong as well. My goodness gracious, what is going on today? Right, I got to try and remember what happened with the last one. It's only been a few days, but yeah. I don't remember which one it was. I didn't just stop recording to just have a really quick flick through and double check what the story was the last time. Basically, we've got our Norse gods. They're flying over Italy, thinking they're over somewhere in the east of England, which they're certainly not. And you've got the 3 witches bimbling about and giving some information and helping other people out. And then you've got Lundqvist and Osiris and everybody. They get into a trailer and they're on their way to try and get to the Valley of Death. And yeah, they're going different ways entirely. Ta-da! I'm just worried about the amount of time today, because obviously my monologues have been kind of carrying on a little bit, and I'm thinking I've got a huffing great big chapter to do, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. This is going to be a double listen, like maybe I have to split it into 2, or at least like have it with a cup of tea and a chocolate biscuit. Well, maybe a packet of chocolate biscuits. You never know. Not that I'm saying you have to eat a packet of chocolate biscuits. That's your own choice, of course. But, consume chocolate biscuits responsibly. Anyway. Do you know they do a toffee Terry's chocolate orange? Rude. So, lovely beans, as ever, if you could hit that like, subscribe, notifications, bell, share, backflip, chocolate digestive, goldfish bowl, and all that sort of thing, that'd be awesome. That's always really helpful. And let us begin chapter 10 of Odds and Gods by the wonderful, the beloved Mr. Thomas of Holt. If this is the right witch, muttered Thor, they've definitely been fiddling about with it since I was last here. And when was that then? 1036. Well, there you are then. Odin stood on the extreme edge of the curb, wavering. Being omniscient, he knew all about cars, and besides, he'd seen them often enough on the telly. It was just that, en masse, thundering past like some stampeding herd of square steel cattle. They seemed a trifle, unnerving. Nary as not when I went to America and seeing those motorways over there. Oh my goodness gracious. I mean, a 6-lane motorway is one thing. You got 3 lanes going one way, you got 3 lanes going the other way. Absolutely no problem. But when you got 6 lanes going one way and 6 lanes going the other way, and then you got a junction, no thank you. No thank you. No thank you. It was just that, en masse, thundering past like some stampeding herd of square steel cattle. They seemed a trifle, unnerving. or would do if he was a mere mortal. And there is, of course, this wretched convention that when gods walk abroad amongst mortals, they have to blend in. Now, if it wasn't for that, of course... Get a move on, will you? Thor grumbled at his elbow. We haven't got all day, you know. Shut up, Odin replied. We can't just go charging through the traffic and have all the cars bounding off us. It'll be too conspicuous. You've got to wait for those little coloured lights to come on. What? Those ones up there on that stick? That's the ones. And that's what mortals do, is it? Yes. It's a funny old world, Thor said, and so we've got to do like they do. Odin nodded. When in Rome, he said. At his other elbow, Frey made a face. Odd you should say that, he said. It hadn't been Odin's fault. Admittedly, it was the inner valve ring seal gasket that had blown, and it had been Odin who'd fitted it. And because you just couldn't get the parts for these older models nowadays, it had been Odin who'd gamshacked up. Now it is not that freaking word, gamshacked. I love it. It had been Odin who'd gamshacked up a substitute out of brown paper and treacle, but the brown paper and treacle gaskets of the immortal gods are, by definition, more lasting than diamonds, and in Odin's opinion, there was no way it should have blown if the inlet manifold had been properly set up in the first place. They were now looking for a car parts store. Odin having a hunch that the gaskets off a 1991 Leyland Roadrunner would probably do the trick at a pinch. Narrator's note, I used to work in a motor mart when I was at school as a part-time job was one of my many part-time jobs, and school being sort of secondary school here, so that'd be sort of like between the age of 14 and 16. And I used to work at Cart Mart, and that's where I was actually introduced onto how to maintain the basics of a car sort of thing. And they used to have and I used to do all the pricing and all the stock and everything like that coming in. And one of the things that always amazed me was a manifold gasket. Them things are expensive. You know, just for a bit of gammied up paper. They're expensive. Well, they were back in when God was a boy. Not even going to tell you when I was 14 years old, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. I used to make license plates as well. It was great. Well, temporary ones you could use on trailers. You couldn't use them on cars. But anyway, hey-de-ho. I will find the part where we were reading. They were now looking for a car parts store. Odin having a hunch that the gaskets off a 1991 Leyland Roadrunner would probably do the trick at a pinch. How do you mean, Frey? I think we are. Odin scowled. What's he on about now, Thor? He demanded. Because if this is some sort of wind-up you two are making up between you, I'm really not in the mood. Thor, who had been conferring with his colleague, shrugged. Sorry, he said. Our mistake. Of course this is Droidwich. Thank you. And that, Thor pointed to their left, that must have been the Droidwich Coliseum we went past just now. And those must be the baths of Alderman Wilkinson. And that big square building over there is probably the world-famous temple of the engineering, municipal and allied trades. And what about that over there? Where? Frey pointed toward the forbidding gateway in front of them, with its curiously garbed attendants. Oh, that, Thor said. I think that's the Catholic Church. Enormous lorry thundering its way through the provincial night. Exhausted driver blinking hazily through a fly-splattered windscreen. One step out of line would guarantee that he spent the rest of his life on a lily pad. Round a hairpin bend to find a tractor standing right across the road. Narrator's note, rude. Marvellous new fifth-generation air brakes pulled the rig up short just before the two vehicles combined together in a Jackson Pollock of twisted metal. If he'd been looking in his rear-view mirror instead of sprawling over the dashboard with gear lever up his right sleeve, he'd have seen a dark green four-wheel drive with tinted windows purr up behind the tailgate. His door is jerked open. He looks down into the muzzle of a big black handgun. Okay, hissed the masked man behind it. Do as I say and you won't get... The driver blinked twice. You what? He said. Do as I say, replied the hijacker irritably in abysmal French, and you won't get hurt. He scowled. Trust me, he added. I'm a doctor. Really. believe this. Straight up. That's a nasty cut you've got on your forehead, by the way. Must be where my hair hit the wheel. You should get that seen to. Any dizziness, nausea, double vision? I don't think so. I've got this migraine coming, I think. No spots in front of the eyes. No. Take 2 aspirin, said the hijacker. Get a good night's sleep, and we'll see how you are in the morning. Meanwhile, he added, get out the cab before I blow your frickin' brains out. Yes, doctor. Shortly afterwards, the lorry continued on its journey with a new driver. It was supposed to be going to Asen province. It was going the wrong way. All right, said the customs official sleepily. What have you got in there? The driver leant out of the window. You're gonna laugh when I tell you, he said. Out of the wind-scoured, sleepless eyes, the customs official glowered at him. I don't think so, he said. Come on, where's your bill of lading? The man in the passenger seat rummaged about in the glove box and handed down a packet of papers. The customs official sighed. Fine, he said. Punch. Okay, you two out, and let's see inside. There was a brief flurry of conversation inside the cab. Hang on, said the driver. Diplomatic thingamagee. I beg your pardon? Immunity, the driver said. Just a tick. Here we are, passports, and this lot is a diplomatic bag. All right? Get really with you. It's a bloody juggernaut. Oh, the driver nodded. Diplomatic juggernaut, though. Innit? You want an international incident? Be my guest. There was a moment's silence. You are absolutely sure, said the customs official, that it's prawns you have got in there? Absolutely, replied the passenger. Look at it this way. Would we say it was prawns if it wasn't? The customs official thought about it. The argument had a certain specious attraction. Tractor spares, yes. Engine parts, certainly. Any time a customs official sees engine parts on a manifest, he ducks for cover and calls up the bomb disposal guys on the radio. But prunes, no, it isn't. They probably have the same effect if you know what I mean. Anyway. No armaments then. Drugs, illicit diamonds, rare species. Not as far as I know, officer. Pirate radio equipment, dutiable goods such as alcohol, perfume or tobacco, works of art requiring an export license. Don't think so. Are you feeling all right, by the way? The customs official raised an eyebrow. Course, he said, and then catching the driver's eye, added, or at least, I think you look a bit under the weather to me, said the driver, putting his head on one side and pursing his lips. If you don't mind me saying so. Oddly enough, said the customs official, just lately I've been getting these sharp, stabbing pains round about here. Been eating regularly? Not very regularly, no. The customs official looked up. Why? He demanded. We're doctors, the passenger explained. Any heartburn? Related symptoms? Not that I'd noticed. Headache? Can't say I have. Sure? Positive. The driver looked up and down the road. At this time of night they had the place to themselves. There was nobody else to be seen in the customs post. Accordingly, he swung open the door of the lorry, dealing the customs official a sharp blow just above the ear. The customs official, predictably, fell over. Layman, the driver called out, putting in the clutch and pulling away. What do they know? And when you wake up, take 2 aspirins. The Swiss guard hesitated, his mind scrolling back through recent memories. He'd seen something, just subliminally, for a fraction of a second, but there had been an anomaly, an abomination even. Something had been where there should be nothing. He stood for a moment, like a statue representing contemplation on some baroque triumphal arch. Then he remembered, and sprang into action, just as he'd thought. Down by the side of the sentry box, 4/5 hidden in the shadows, was an empty, crisp packet. He snatched it up, marched it over to the receptacle provided, and binned it. Another blow struck. He congratulated himself against the forces of entropy. Prompted by this thought, he reviewed his position in the cosmos and saw that it was a good thing. Only 3 months since he'd left his Alpine canton and joined the standing army of the Papal State, and already he was standing guard at the gates of the Vatican. All right, yes, the goods entrance of the Vatican, which was pretty much like goods entrances anywhere, but only if viewed superficially. I had rather be a goods entrance keeper in the house of the Lord than dwell in the tents of the ungodly. Then the ground started to shake. Instinctively his hands tightened on the shaft of his halberd, but a glare of white light and the low roar of massive engines reassured him. It was just a lorry. A lorry. At 3 o'clock in the morning. What could it be, he asked himself, and in due course the driver advised. Prunes. Prunes. That's right. Now if you just open the damn gates, we can unload this lot and I can go to bed. All right. The guard narrowed his eyes. Prunes, he said. The driver leant out of the window and manoeuvred his head until the tip of his nose was but a few microns from the guard's forehead. Look, he said. Prunes it is, and if you want to go and get the big fella out of his pit and ask him what he wants 6 million dried plums for, then jolly good luck to you, and send me a postcard from hell. Otherwise, open this flaming gate before we all die of old age. Yes, but prunes? A few seconds before the driver would otherwise have put his foot down on the throttle and crashed the gate, the passenger leant across, smiled placidly, and said, Perhaps I can explain, my son, he added. Gush, said the guard, stepping backwards and standing stiffly to attention. I didn't see you there, your reverence. No matter. The passenger removed the cardinal's hat and put it on the seat beside him. The Holy Father's compliments, he said, and may we please proceed. Of course, your reverence, only... Yes. Prunes, father. It just seems... Yes. In just a moment, and I'll do the gates for you. Monsignor Donatus O'Rourke did out the last buckle on his crimson flak jacket, muttered a final Hail Mary, and drew back the plunger of the syringe, flooding the chamber with holy water. His bell jingled faintly in its shoulder holster. "Okay, lads," he growled into his walkie-talkie. "This is it. Don't screw up, and let's go for it." Monsignor O'Rourke was no backstreet exorcist. He was a pro, from the tips of his asbestos gloves and ring with built-in Geiger counter to the toes of his rubber boots. People called him a mercenary, a theologian of fortune, have bell, will travel. He laughed in their faces. Narrator's note, it always reminds me of like the Peter Jackson early films. I don't know if you've seen them, Braid Dead and Bad Taste. People who think of Peter Jackson, they think of Rolling Green Hills and Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, which I still have not seen. I can't sit still for that amount of time. But seriously, if now I'm not really a fan of horrors, but his early works, if just they're very gory, but they're hilarious at the same time. So Bad Taste and Brain Dead, yes, absolutely. So very far removed from the epics that he produces now, but of course the Air New Zealand, I think it's the Air New Zealand advert, absolute genius. Okie dokie. A theologian of fortune, have bell will travel. He laughed in their faces. Whenever he did a job, he knew he was doing it for the big guy. Narrator's note, and the reason being is there was a priest that was a ninja priest in Bad Taste and Brain Dead. Whenever he did a job, he knew he was doing it for the big guy, in the way that he knew was right, even if the red hats around the curule chair had declared his methods anathema. Anathema? Anathema. Anathema. Ah! The substantial sums of money that found their way to his Swiss account he regarded simply as contributions to the war chest. Fighting the old gods with the new technology was not cheap, and he had long since learnt not to expect any funding from Holy Mother Church, or, as he preferred to think of it, the organisation. As a result, he had to do business with some pretty dubious characters who he suspected were motivated by concerns not 100% connected with the struggle against the forces of darkness. So what? As he'd said in his evidence to the Walensky Commission, he knew that what he was doing was right, and if he had to raise his own funds in order to do it, that's the way the Eucharist crumbles. Not, of course, that he'd ever even considered selling holy water to the Shiites, as the Yellow Press had alleged, but even if he had, his conscience would still be clear. His men, all hand-picked, the flower of the priesthood, should all be in position by now. He turned to the man crouched beside him and said, "Well?" The man, who was a doctor by profession, nodded. "What are we waiting for?" he said. "OK," replied Monsignor O'Rourke. "Let's nokes and spokes. Go, men." On his command, 3 priests in black balaclavas abseiled down from the balcony above, landing with pinpoint precision beside the tailgate of the lorry. From their backpacks they unslung heavy black chainsaws. A second or so later, the night was torn by the sound of steel on iron. "Second wave into possession." Monsignor O'Rourke barked into the walkie-talkie. "This is it, guys. Remember Joppa." 12 priests with reeking censers scuttled out from the shadows and hit the deck, pineal glands bumping, brains clamouring. That's pineal with a P-I-N-E-A-L. Just saying. Brains clamouring. What on earth does he mean? Remember Joppa? As soon as they were in place, the second section scrambled forward, dragging behind them an enormous sled-mounted bell. "Nice work," snapped the Monsignor. "Red section, stand by, and... candles!" On all 4 sides of the courtyard, enormous spotlights snapped on, drenching the ancient stones with photons. At precisely the same moment, the chainsaw screamed through the last few millimetres of the tailgate, which fell out into the courtyard with a tinny clang. The sensors, launched with unerring aim, sailed through the air into the back of the lorry, filling the confined space with thick billows of scented smoke. The bell boomed. "Doing good, guys," O'Rourke muttered. "Now, in there with the book and..." His lips froze. Damn, there's always something, isn't there? "Listen up, guys," he said as casually as he could. "Anybody out there got a spare Bible?" Inside the body of the lorry, the situation was not good. By the time Osiris had recovered from the effects of an unexpected lungful of incense and had tumbled to what was going on, it had almost been too late. Absolute chaos, he reflected, absolutely typical. Still, what the hell do you expect from a generation that believes that the earth revolves around the sun? He rallied his forces, which had been reduced to a manageable size by a snatch squad of PVC cassocked priests who had knocked out Kurt Lundqvist with a weighted crucifix and whisked him away. Admittedly, the man had been trying to help, but elbow room inside the lorry had been limited at the best of times, and Lundqvist, rolling around, firing his gun and lobbing stun grenades, had taken up rather more of it than his net usefulness warranted. Someone would no doubt get him back in due course, when the time was right. "Carl," he shouted, "fetch a tire iron." "This," Pan coughed, fanning incense out of his eyes, "is ludicrous. Why don't we just turn them all into woodlice and be done with it?" Osiris shook his head. "A bit out of touch, aren't we?" he said. "No can do, ever since we signed the Ravenna Convention." Pan blinked. "The what?" "The Ravenna Convention." Osiris ducked to avoid a hand-thrown rosary. "Part of the handover deal when we packed it all in. Basically, it says that the Christian mob can push us about all day and all they like, and we can do bugger all about it." "You're kidding." "Wasn't my idea," Osiris replied. He reached up, caught a censer mid-flight and threw it back. "It was the Roman lot, I seem to remember, always quarrelling among themselves, Reckon they needed some sort of peacekeeping force once they retired, to stop them cutting each other's throats in the TV room and shoving laxatives in the sanatogen. He gave Pan a meaningful look. Nothing to do with me, Pan replied. Never heard of it, in fact. Certainly never signed anything. His face brightened, which means surely I can change him into anything I like, and nobody can touch me for it. You, Osiris replied. No. Me? Yes. If you so much as transform a hair on their heads, then I'm mythology. But not, he added grimly, before I turn you into a sewer god. Understood? You wouldn't. It's a dirty, rotten job, Osiris replied. But someone's got to do it. Fine, Pan sighed. So what are you going to do now? That's what I need the tire iron for. Thanks, Carol. Break open those crates with you. Can I help? Sandra, who'd spent the last 10 minutes sleeping peacefully after a direct hit on the side of the head from a hassock, crawled to the wheel arch and crouched down behind a crate. It was at times like this, she felt, when the battle is raging all around and the menfolk are battling desperately for mere survival, that you wish that you'd brought your knitting. I expect so, Osiris replied. When did you last eat anything? Sandra considered. I had a packet of crisps on the ferry, she replied, and a Mars bar and an apple a couple of hours ago. After that, I'm famished, she said. Fine, said Osiris, as Carl reduced the nearest packing case to matchwood with a well-aimed blow of the tire iron. Have a prune. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. From behind the curtain there was a faint snap, as the priest lit a lucky strike. Yeah, sure, he said wearily. Okay, let's hear it. And what trivial misdemeanour is bothering us today? The penitent hesitated. Well, I missed confession yesterday. Big deal, the priest yawned. You didn't have anything to confess, right? Come on, you must be able to do better than that. Well, there was a pause, during which the priest drew down a lungful of smoke and coughed savagely. I also harboured uncharitable thoughts about Brother Justinian. You harboured uncharitable thoughts against Brother Justinian? Yes, that's it. Well, yes, I suppose so. You guys, you make me want to puke, you know that. Sins, you don't know sins from nothing. Where I come from, now we could teach you wimps to think it through about sinning. Where I come from. The priest paused, hawked mightily and spat, ringing a spittoon somewhere on his side of the curtain like a gigantic gong. Where I come from, he continued, we wouldn't give you the snuff from our noses for anything less than a double aggravated insert worst crime possible here. And you come hassling me with goddamn uncharitable thoughts. Get out of here, will you? There was a long, puzzled silence. Then the penitent said, Shall I say 3 Hail Marys? Hey, the priest clicked his tongue. I get this feeling, he said, that you're going to say them no matter what I tell you. So basically, yeah, go for it. Do your karma. Now, get Jesus H. Christ, man, what was that? As the shockwaves of the tremor died away, the priest ripped aside the curtains of the confessional and sprinted away down the cloister toward the presumed source of the noise, scattering popcorn as he went. About 30 seconds later, he turned a corner into the small courtyard by the goods entrance and stopped dead in his tracks, as if he'd just run straight into a transparent breeze-block wall. Holy shit, he whispered, not entirely without justification. He saw, in the eerie glow of blue flares and bright white floods, a lorry in the middle of the yard, ringed by monks, crouched down behind such cover as they could find. From the back of the van emanated a succession of scintillating and extremely colourful sparks and forks of lightning, which arced and buzzed their way around the yard before earthing themselves back into the van. By way of return fire, the monks were lobbing in smoking censers, lighted candles and handbells. 2 rather more worldly figures on an adjoining balcony were blazing away with automatic pistols, although to no perceptible effect. There was a stifling odour of sanctity and sulphur, and from inside the lorry, audible even above the sundry bangs and crashes, the sound of steadily chomping jaws, punctuated by the occasional rending belch. Hey, breathed the priest, as the penitent scurried up and ducked down beside him. "This is real, you know. Sure, back home you don't go out the vestry door without your can of mace and your shiv, but this is something else, you know." He laughed for sheer joy. "Man," he breathed, "this is better than Ghostbusters." Two monks wheeled in a supermarket trolley laden with the biggest Bible the penitent had ever seen, under cover of 3 Augustinian cannons with perspex riot shields. A particularly flamboyant sparkle whizzed through the air, splattered against the shield, and dissolved into a floral tribute of green and orange cinders. 2 monks ran up and doused the flames.
"That's the pork rib,"
crackled a bullhorn.
"Deploy the holy water cannons. Come on, guys, move it."
A platform of monks darted off into the shadows and returned with one of the papal forklifts from the goods entrance. Narrator's note. A papal forklift. Anyway, painted bright yellow and emblazoned with in hic signio vinces stencilled on the wings. On the forks was an enormous contraption like an outsized fire extinguisher, out of which led 100 yards of black rubber hose. 2 of the monks contrived to tangle their feet in it and fall over. A pale lilac sparkle soared through the air in a graceful parabola and lit on the roof of the forklift, which promptly vanished from sight in a retina engraving flurry of colours. I love that analogy.
"Come on, guys, this is sloppy,"
snorted the bullhorn.
"Blue section, give cover. Purple section, deploy the book."
With cries of Geronimo, Yeehaw, and blessed be the name of St. Teresa of Avila, whose day this is, parties of monks wheeled the trolley forward under the cover of huge asbestos screens. All around, handbells clanged, candles flared. It was, the priest remarked to the penitent, and please excuse my pronunciation of this one, like bloody Septuagint all over again. Inside the lorry, the atmosphere was tense, and of course thick as cream cheese with incense from the censers. Pan, with a handkerchief over his face and a barricade of smashed crates affording some light cover, was shooting coloured lightning from his fingertips and doing his best to dodge flying handbells at the same time. Behind him, Osiris, Sandra and Carl huddled round a heap of empty tins and chewed grimly. "That's it," Sandra groaned through her full mouth. "I can't eat another one. I'm sorry. You'll just have to leave me." Osiris said nothing. His mouth was stuffed so full his lips could scarcely meet, but instead grabbed a can, slit the top off with his thumbnail and thrust it at her. She winced and she took it. Now this is my worst idea of hell. I can't die. They were eating prunes. What? And of course spitting out the stones into an upended crate, which by now was 3/4 full. The floor of the lorry was 6 inches deep in empty cans, and there was syrup everywhere.
"Are you jokers nearly done?"
Pan yelled over his shoulder.
"There's no way I can keep this up for much longer."
"Tinker, tailor, soldier."
"Stay with it,"
Osiris mumbled back.
"Just a few more dozen should do it. If only you can—"
"Sailor, rich man, poor man." Osiris turned his head and stared.
"Carl, just what do you think you're doing?"
"Beg your man," replied Carl, looking up. "Eating prunes, like you said. Thief."
"Yes, fine, but what's all this soldier sailor stuff? Have you gone completely—"
"It's what you say when you eat prunes."
"Is it? Why?"
"Dunno." Carl considered for a moment, his jaws moving.
"Brings you luck, I suppose."
"Does it?"
"It's supposed to, I suppose."
Osiris thought about it.
"Oh, well," he said, "can't do any harm, I guess. Chartered surveyor, inspector of taxes, research physicist."
He paused, ejected a mouthful of stones into the crate, and wiped a torrent of juice off his chin.
"Management consultant, systems coordinator."
"It's a shame," Sandra observed, "there isn't any custard. Me mum always does lots of hot custard with prunes."
"Computer software engineer, trainee account executive. There, that'll have to do."
Osiris spat out the last few stones, took a deep breath and drew the crate towards him.
"Right," he said, "this is what. Builder, milkman, postman, bookies runner, this is what we have to do." The monks had finally succeeded in manhandling the trolley with the book in it right up to the tailgate of the lorry. Not without heavy losses. 7 of their number were ambling aimlessly around the courtyard, clothed from head to foot in bright blue fire, bumping into corners and singing quietly to themselves. Another dozen lay on their backs on the flagstones, glowing alarmingly and giggling at the moon.
"Okay, you're doing great, guys,"
rasped the bullhorn.
"On my command, open the book."
And then there was a horrible moment as the whole courtyard seemed to fill with a bright green flare as handfuls of prune stones flew out of the lorry into the air. A split second later they came down, rattling on the flags, bouncing and skittering, and there they lay. A monk, who was on fatigues for a week for dropping a loaded chalice on the sergeant major's foot, stared at the stones and whimpered. Bloody tourists, he thought. Who exactly do they think is going to have to sweep that lot up? Crack. One prune stone, which had chanced to fall into a shallow pool of fizzing blue light, twitched sharply. Out of one side, a tiny green shoot nuzzled its way out, groped with a tendril and touched down on the courtyard floor. A second later, it wasn't alone. "Come on," Osiris muttered under his breath. "What the hell's keeping you?" It all happened in a fraction of a second. There was a fusillade of tiny cracks, a scurrying of prunestone shells, a filthy smell. And then there was a forest. All the prunestones were suddenly sprouting. Like the fingers of a martyr to rheumatism, their roots clawed a couple of times at the flags, scratched a few times at the surface, and thrust a taproot down through the stones and into the bowels of the earth. The trees grew. When they were all 20 feet high, Osiris tapped Carl on the shoulder. Farmer, painter and decorator, handyman, pulled him to his feet and shouted in his ear. Carl nodded, grabbed Sandra by the hand and hauled her after him out of the lorry into the forest. Forest was, by now, the only apposite word for it. True, it was made up of nothing but plum trees, victorious, and it didn't actually cover very much ground, but it was quite definitely a forest. What it lacked in the horizontal axis was more than adequately compensated for by the skyscraping height of the vertical.
"It seems to be working,"
Osiris said. His face was green and he kept swallowing hard.
"That's splendid. Now then, somebody give me a push and we'll get out of here."
The wood, to be precise, the sacred grove, was still going strong. A snatched squad of monks who had been trying to sneak into the lorry through the front passenger door were suddenly smothered in long, leathery twigs. Leathery twigs. Apologies for that one. Were suddenly smothered in long, leathery twigs, shaken violently and hurled backwards into the middle of the yard. No prizes for guessing whose side the timber was on.
"That's the trouble with this business sometimes,"
observed one of the 2 doctors to his companion as they watched the plum forest below them explode into blossom.
"Sometimes you just can't see the wood for the—"
The rest of the sentence was drowned out by the crash of falling masonry. A handful of prunestones had chanced to fly through an open window, and now there were large holes in the walls with plum-laden branches sticking out through them. A task force of monks with strimmers and electric hedge trimmers were fighting a desperate rearguard action to save the auxiliary paraffin store. Narrators know they have these on hand in this story. That's genius. There was a crash, as of a sash being thrown up. Monsignor O'Rourke froze in the act of lobbing a chasuble and glanced up to see an open window and an all too familiar form silhouetted in the frame. It was wearing purple silk pyjamas.
"You there?"
boomed a voice from the window.
"Keep the noise down. There's people up here trying to sleep."
"Yes," muttered Osiris. "Point taken. All I can say is it seemed like a good idea at the time."
"Did it?"
Pan frowned at him.
"There was a time, then, when you thought it'd be a really spiffing wheeze to hem us in with an impenetrable grove of supernatural plum trees. Fine. Any similar ideas about how we're going to get out of here?"
"Look," I said, and Pan continued, making the most of what was for him a unique opportunity to tell someone so instead of being told so by somebody else.
Any further brainwaves about how we're going to slip past all those loony monks and priests and so on once we've managed to get out of here? Or didn't you want to spoil the spontaneous excitement of it all?
Osiris scowled at him.
That'll do, he said. There's no need to get all amusing about it. We'll just have to apply our minds a bit, that's all.
Maybe, Sandra suggested, they'll get bored and go away.
That's what you reckon, is it? Pan demanded. They'll eventually wander off to watch the flying pigs or something. Well, you never know, do you? Or perhaps the sky will fall on their heads. Perhaps, he went on, making the most of it while it lasted, the gods will come and rescue us, you know, do a machina, all that sort of caper. Now calm down, Osiris interrupted sharply. We're in enough of a hole already without you indulging in flights of fancy. Flights of fancy what? Osiris was about to answer this with a homily on the childishness of low-grade irony when the sky darkened, the earth began to shake, and a loud crack of thunder made his teeth vibrate in his head. He looked up. No, we are not going to crash, retorted Odin testily. I fixed the lock nuts myself. Everything is entirely under. The engine crashed. There was a silence, apart from the death rattle of the engine as it feebly spun a flywheel or so. A few of the riper plums fell from the tree and splattered on the rear mudguard. Control. We seem, Frey remarked, hauling himself out from under a fallen branch, to have landed in some sort of a forest. Or that? Quite. A forest in the middle of Droidwich. Odin's head popped up from inside the cab. He was covered in oil, and his spectacles lay at a crazy slant across the bridge of his nose. Probably a park or a picnic area, he said. Look, shin up that tree and see if you can spot something like goalposts or a bandstand, something we can navigate by. Must I? Frey gave him a troubled look. Come on, Odin. You know about me and heights. I get vertigo standing on tiptoe. Can't someone else do it? Leave it to me, Thor grumbled. He knelt down, tucked his socks inside his boots, and laid a hand on the nearest tree trunk. I'm going up now, he said. I may be gone for some time, and if I'm not back in half an hour, bloody well come and find me, okay? Okay. Oh, Thor? Yes. Before you go? Yes. Have one of these plums. They're not at all bad. With a bad grace, Thor started to climb the tree. Odin, meanwhile, was studying the AA book of town centre plans.
Narrator's note, just over halfway if you need a coffee break or a tea break. Jeepers creepers, this is a hefty chapter.
After a less than flawless climb, the tree was designed more for aesthetic and horticultural purposes than ease of ascent. Thor reached the top. He rested for a moment, then shaded his eyes with his hand and looked out, and he saw a cat snoring.
She chooses her times. Apologies for the Xena snoring in the background, but we shall continue. We need to continue.
So Thor reached the top. He rested for a moment, then shaded his eyes with his hand and looked out and saw...
Hey, you two. Well, you'll never guess what I can see. What? I said you'll never guess. I wasn't, said Frey, through a mouthful of banana. Proposing to try? Are you going to tell us, or are we going to have to wait for your collected letters and diaries? I think, said Thor, we're actually inside the Vatican.
Frey glanced up.
Nah, he said, I read a book about it once. The decors are wrong. For a start, it's not the right ceiling. Yes, but the ceiling in the Vatican, Frey continued obliviously, is sort of white and covered in these paintings. I never heard anything about plain navy blue ceilings with tiny white dots. Listen! Very famous, the Vatican ceiling, Frey went on. There's this really famous picture of the two electricians wiring something up. Only they've obviously not earthed it properly, because where one geezer is handing something to the other one, probably a screwdriver or a pair of tin snips, there's this big flash and sparks running up and down the guy's arms. I think it's one of those public information posters, something like increasing safety in the home.
I meant to say,
said Thor patiently,
inside the Vatican grounds.
What makes you think that?
Divine intuition.
Oh. Frey folded the banana skin neatly and threw it over his shoulder. Any people about?
Odd you should mention that,
Thor replied.
Yes, there's quite a few milling about down there.
You know something? This place is crawling with priests. At the bottom of the tree there was a hurried conference. Ask them, Frey called out, if we can borrow a set of welding gear. One of the few remaining advantages of being a god, Pan said to himself, as he raced along behind Osiris's wheelchair through the darkened streets of Rome, is that you don't have any hang-ups about believing in miracles. For instance, there we all were, trapped, no way out, and next minute something like an enormous traction engine materialises in the sky, swoops down, smashes a gap in the outer wall, ploughs through the plum trees, and lands slap bang on top of the lorry, allowing us to make a smart getaway while the priests and monks are having severe hysterics and crises of faith. Not many mortals could handle something like that, but for a god, all in a day's work.
Any idea where we are?
No, Pan replied.
Years since I was in Rome. Last time I was here, in fact, I remember watching the Christians being thrown to the hamsters.
You mean the lions?
No, said Pan. Hamsters. It was a Wednesday matinee. Are they following up, do you know?
Osiris glanced back over his shoulder.
I don't think so, he replied, but let's not take any chances. Go easy a minute, let the mortals catch up. Any idea what that big engine thing was?
I reckon it must have been a deus machina.
Fancy, said Pan. I always wondered how those things worked. Bloody handy, the way it just turned up like that. Maybe it was fate or something.
I didn't think we were supposed to get any of that, Pan said.
Being gods?
Maybe it wasn't for us. Maybe it was for the mortals.
Anyway, who cares? Let's just accept it and be grateful, huh? A sort of a fait accompli, you mean?
Osiris sighed. He was tired, frustrated, disoriented, and very full of prunes. Narrators know I can't imagine anything worse. It was probably just as well that the Lady Isis had at some stage mislaid most of his pancreas, because otherwise he'd probably be feeling a bit under the weather by now.
We lost Lundqvist then, he observed.
Pan shrugged.
You can't make omelettes, he said. I expect he'll be all right. After all, he is a professional assassin, and there are a load of monks and things. Supposed to turn the other cheek and all that. Knowing Kurt Lundqvist, he'd have no difficulty knowing what to do with a turned cheek. I know him from somewhere, I gather.
Pan nodded.
A long time ago, he said. I was up around Thessaly someplace on a job. He was there doing his thing. Not a very nice person to be around when he's working, unless you know exactly who it is he's there to see to. I was very relieved to find out it wasn't me.
It wasn't then? Pan shook his head.
Nah, he replied. Just some local fertility spirit they needed knocking off. You know, one of those matinee idol types who has to die each winter so that the crops may germinate and the corn ripen.
And Lundqvist was there to assassinate him?
Pan nodded. At the time, he specialised in that sort of thing. He said, I believe it's what they call a serial killer.
If I never see another prune as long as I live,
Osiris remarked,
that'll be absolutely fine by me.
Ah, here they are. Come on, you two. We may be immortal, but we haven't got all day.
Sandra and Carl came round the corner, red-faced and panting, the result, Pan presumed, of violent exertion on a full stomach.
Are you being followed?
Osiris demanded. I don't, Sandra gasped, took a deep breath and went on, think so.
Haven't looked for a while. Haven't heard anything.
Prunes getting to you? Asked Pan sympathetically. Sandra nodded.
No custard, she explained. For some reason, the mention of custard made Osiris restless.
Narrator's note, if you're a fan, if you know, you know. If you know, you know. Custard space. Right then, he said. Time we weren't here. Lead on.
Pan frowned.
Where? He asked. I don't know, do I? Osiris replied. You're supposed to be a god. Use your flaming initiative.
He had hardly finished speaking when they all heard an ominous sound in the distance, the blowing of whistles, and the faint susurration of many men singing the 23rd Psalm under their breath, while running.
This way, said Pan decisively,
and he put his weight behind Osiris's wheelchair and started to push strenuously. The two mortals found themselves struggling to keep up. As observed previously, the art of leading the way down narrow alleyways on the pretext of knowing a neat little shortcut is an essential part of the craft of spreading confusion, and accordingly Pan set a brisk pace through a maze of back streets. By the time the mortals gave it the struggle and sagged in a shop doorway, announcing they were incapable of one more step, it was nearly light, and several tradesmen were rolling up their shutters to catch the early customers on their way to work. In one such shop, Pan led the way. It turned out to be a typical old-fashioned small backstreet barber's shop with 4 well-worn chairs, a foxed mirror, and a small bald man with brown liver-spotted head and enormous eyebrows standing ready to greet them. On seeing him, Pan did an immediate double-take.
Buongiorno, signori, signorina, trilled the barber, indicating his chairs with a fine practised flourish. Per favore, si sedreki, che bella, Gianita, oh my God, it's you! Pan grinned sheepishly. Hiya, Miffy, he said. Nice place you've got here. The barber drew his substantial eyebrows together like curtains. Get on out of it, you bastard, he snarled. Oh, you've got the bloody cheek to come waltzing in here after all you've... Excuse me. The barber turned on Osiris with an angry gesture, registered the wheelchair and moderated his tone with visible effort. Look here, chum, he said. You tell your mate here to sling his hook, otherwise I'm bleeding well gonna sling it for him, okay, if he's not out of here by the time I count to... Osiris raised an eyebrow. You two know each other, then? Barber laughed savagely. Pan, who'd stepped behind the wheelchair at the start of the exchange, nodded. We go way back, he said. This is Mithras, god of the morning. He's a sun god. Was, said Miffy emphatically, was a sun god. Packed it in 1,500 years ago, and keep your bloody voice down, will you? In the street outside, Osiris could hear the tramp of sandalled feet, the ominous clinking of censers. Look, he said, we're gods. I'm Osiris, in fact. Used to do this on Lark, just like you. Egypt and Upper Nubia. We're in a bit of a jam, and we'd really appreciate it if you'd just let us hide out in the back here for a while. All right? Mithras narrowed his eyes and peered. You're Osiris, he said. That's right. Cool, said the barber with a faint chuckle. Stone me, and I had you down as this big-toned geezer with a broad chest and a sort of Kirk Douglas chin. That was me 2,000 years ago, Osiris replied. Or rather let myself go, but since then. I used to know your lad once. Horus. That's it, Horus. Great lanky ponce with the head of a sparrowhawk or something. That's him. The barber considered the position for a minute. All right then, he said. Straight through there. You can hide in the stockroom, but as soon as you've got rid of who's chasing you, I'm going to pull his lungs out. Fair enough, Osiris said. This way? Time was when the dungeons of the Vatican were the most fashionable in Europe, attracting a cosmopolitan elite, and the post of chief jailer was regarded as the ni plus ultra of the turnkey's profession.
Nowadays, most of the cells have been turned into offices for the lesser officials or closed file stores, and the chief jailership has been amalgamated with the office of the assistant downstairs caretaker and deputy inspector of drains. The Vatican is, however, a proudly conservative and traditionalist institution, and therefore there is always one proper, old-fashioned, honest-to-goodness dungeon ready and waiting, just in case a really important heretic turns up out of the blue, with its own specialist jailer and genuine fitted rats. Ooh, fitted rats. True, the health and safety insists that these rats be kept in a cage and fed and watered regularly by a fully certified and trained rat care operative in accordance with the EC statement of practice, but it's the thought that counts.
Definitely overreacted, if you ask me, Odin said for the 5th time. Granted, we were trespassing, and maybe we did inadvertently damage some masonry and a few trees. But even so,
he scowled with indignation.
This would never have happened, he added darkly, in Accrington.
Who's itty-bitty rat then? Said Frey in the corner. Who's got the dearest little ratty pawpaws in the whole wide world?
You still haven't explained, said Thor, why we just can't beat the shit out of them and push off. I mean, for crying out loud, Odin, we're gods. Exactly.
What do you mean exactly? Thor snapped, standing up in the escape tunnel he'd already started digging. It was already shoulder high. They'd only been there 20 minutes, and the equipment available to him was a half-broken china mug and a toothbrush.
One of these days, Odin, you're going to wake up and find the bailiffs have repossessed your brain. Exactly because we're gods, Odin replied. This is a Christian jurisdiction. We shouldn't be here. If we cause trouble, it would lead to a serious theological incident. Not if we only pulped them a bit, just enough so's we could escape, plus a few kicks of the jacksy for luck. I don't suppose anyone would even notice. Little ratikins want nice piece of coconut ice. Very nice. Yum yum. No, not want a piece of... Frey, will you stop talking to that sodding rodent?
Oh, yeah, Frey replied. And where else am I going to get an intelligent conversation in here?
Serious,
Odin went on.
Theological incident, which in turn means the Pope, or whatever he calls himself, writing a stiff letter to the Henderson, which means... All right, said Thor. Point taken, if only I hadn't listened to you in the first place. I like that coming from you. You knew we were in Rome all along. Why the devil didn't you say anything?
Thor made a rude noise and returned to his digging. Being a god, and to the gods all things are known, he had already worked out that this tunnel, his tunnel, if continued on its existing course for 750 yards, would bring him out slap bang in the middle of the main laundry room. They could dress up in sheets and pretend to be ghosts. By the way, said Frey, in between inquiring of his new friend, who exactly had the sweetest little iskery-whiskery-woos in the whole world ever, anybody got any idea who he is? He jerked his head toward the slumped figure by the door. Whoever he is, looks like they gave him a right old sing to.
Dunno, said Thor. He was in here when we arrived. I think so. You could wake him if you wanted.
All right, said Frey. He leant across to firm hold of the figure's ear and twisted smartly.
Ah! said Kurt Lundqvist, waking up. Where?
Frey smiled reassuringly.
We don't actually know that ourselves, he said, but we think it's the Vatican. I'm Frey, by the way. That's Thor, and he's Odin. Kurt Lundqvist! Hey, what am I doing here? How should I know? Frey replied. Actually, he admitted, I should, because in theory I know everything. But there it is. We were supposed to go on refresher courses, but we never bothered.
Lundqvist looked them over.
You're gods, aren't you? He said.
Give the man a big cigar, Frey replied. Of course we're retired now. How about you? Lundqvist considered. As noted previously, he was basically a very religious man. Well, you had to be in his line of work. Atheism to a supernatural hitman would be as unthinkable as freeze-dried rain, but he was painfully aware that from time to time he'd been called upon to commit some fairly sacrilegious acts in the course of his duties, up to and including the destruct testing of some deities' eternal lives. And, for the life of him, he couldn't remember whether this particular pantheon had crossed his path before. Best, he decided, to be a little bit discreet.
I'm a journalist, he therefore said. War correspondent with the Chicopee Falls Evening Intelligencer. Hey, what are you guys doing in there? And why don't you just...
Because, Thor said, that great Jesse over here won't let us. Don't thump the gods, he says. Don't smash down the walls, he says. Wait for someone from the High Commission to come and bail us out. Fat chance. Though you know perfectly well there are proper procedures. Bearing in mind, Thor went on, that the High Commission was closed down in AD 332 on the orders of Constantine the Great. Yes, I know Nkulunkalu, the great sky spirit of Zululand, has a charge of the affairs still, but I gather he consists of a few small clouds and a build-up of latent static electricity, which really isn't going to be much use to us in here.
Oh, I don't know, Frey yawned. Sounds like he could cause dry rot in the joists or something, and then they'd have to move us out to a hotel. Take time, though. Kurt Lundqvist levered himself up onto his hands and knees and looked around. As always with him, ever since he popped out of the womb and immediately grabbed the forceps and dived for a strategic cover under the incubator, his first thought was to locate a usable weapon and a defensible position to fall back on. Limited scope in the conditions prevailing, and he had to content himself with seizing Frey's left shoe and crouching in the corner of the cell.
Let's get this straight, shall we? He said. You guys are gods, right?
Thor nodded.
And you want to bust out, but you can't.
Yup.
Not, Lundqvist went on, because you haven't the capability, but because it'd be a serious breach of protocol, right?
Narrator's not, for freak's sake, these jinxes are getting out of control.
Yeah,
I digress.
Exactly.
Lundqvist nodded.
So, he said, if you could secure the services of, say, a highly trained soldier of fortune who could bash in the guards without any nasty theological comebacks, you could do all of the rest of the escaping, like, you know, the rope ladders and waiting helicopters bit, standing on your heads.
I guess so,
Thor replied.
Fine.
Lundqvist smiled and felt in his pocket.
Allow me, he said, to give you my card. Can you imagine that? Like, Hitman cards. Would it have a picture, or do you think it'd just have a target or a line, or just be sort of like really officious? Wow, that was a huffing, great big, beastie, huge, just ridiculously large chapter. But going forward, they should be a bit smaller. My God, that was a large chapter.
Goodness gracious me, feels like a bit of a marathon. We're over an hour.
And because of that, and because it's silly o'clock in the morning, I'm going to have to crack on and get things done. But, as ever, if it's too hot your way, drink yourself lots of cool water, keep in the shade, keep nice and cool, and just take it easy, just have a nice relax, hydrate. And if you're too cold, get yourself a nice hot cup of tea, or hot chocolate, or a coffee, and wrap yourself up warm. And just be all snuggy. Just snuggy. I can't believe how this month is just absolutely herring away. But until we get on to our next chapter, enjoy this one. Give me a holler if you've got any questions or queries or feedback or that sort of thing. But most of all, as ever, take it easy, Petal. Look after yourself.